Hey, it's Ron from the Commander's Brew. Got an interesting one for you today.
Hello, I'm Darksteel Eric, representative of Darksteel Industries. FYI, Darksteel Industries is now the main shareholder of Commander's Brew, so all major decisions will run through us. But for now, we're going to let Sean continue to make the show, but we'll add in a few details as we see fit. Stay tuned. That is all for now.
Seemed like a bit of a technical glitch. Anyway, we're doing Izzet Dragons this time, and we're going to find out which partner and background is best suited for it. Check it out. Okay, Izzet Dragons, we're looking at the new background and partner set. They're not really partners, it's just a background and a monocolored commander that lets you choose a background. A Dragons build did come in the set, so let's look into it. Before we pick one though, let's look at some cards that are probably going to go on the deck no matter what. Sol Ring, Command Tower, Island. Nah, I'm just kidding. I mean, they will go on the deck, but you knew that. Dragon Tempest is probably the #1 card that any Dragons tribal deck's going to do. You're going to get some haste, which is key because there's a lot of attack triggers, and doing a ton of damage is always a plus. To any target too, that's good. This could be a win con. Dragon's Hoard is one of a million 3-mana rocks that tap for any color, but also give you something extra. In this case, it's extra card draw late in the game. Haven of the Spirit Dragon, we definitely have some room for some non-color lands that only produce colorless, and I think there's room for one that gets something back from the graveyard. Crucible of Fire is a maybe depending on how many dragons you go with. It also depends how big the dragons already are. There's a certain point where getting +3/+3 doesn't make a huge difference because everything's already huge. Crucible of the Spirit Dragon's another land that, just in case we don't have a lot to do with our mana, we can store it up and then eventually cast a bunch of big dragons in a turn. Games are getting faster. It's not that often that there's a little bit of extra mana sitting around anymore. You know what I mean? I think Sarkhan's Triumph is worth considering. It's just a simple tutor for any dragon. An Orb of Dragonkind is another one of these ramp cards. As long as we're doing mostly dragon spells, this is actual ramp. And all those cards I mentioned come to a total of about $13, Dragon Tempest being the only one that costs more than a few dollars. But it is the best one, so, you know. And still, before I decide who the best partner and background is, I'm going to go through some key, cheap dragons. These are going to be dragon cards that are just really good and don't cost a lot of real life money. Steel Hellkite's really good. Even if we don't have a ton of mana to pump it up, being able to just nuke all tokens for 0 cost is pretty good, or just pay a little bit to get rid of a bunch of utility things. And quite frankly, as decks get cheaper and cheaper these days, Steel Hellkite does even more work. Hellkite Tyrant, even if we're not brewing around it to win the game by having a million artifacts, 20. Feels like a million sometimes. Just being able to connect and steal a bunch of mana rocks is excellent. Niv-Mizzet Parun is a hefty mana cost. It's very specific, but just a bunch of extra card draw. People are going to have to cast instants and sorceries. We're going to get a bunch of cards with this, even if we don't have a ton of instants and sorceries ourselves. Drakuseth, King of Attacking. I mean, we have to split that damage up a few ways, but I mean, damage is damage. Lathliss is also especially good. Making free dragon tokens is, I think, the second best part of this card. The most important part of this card, in my opinion, is the fact that you can give fire breathing to the entire team. That's very efficient. Okay, I've touched on some staples, some cards that are probably going to go into the deck no matter what, but who is going to be our partner and background? Who's the legendary creature? You can either go a blue legendary with a red background or a red legendary with a blue background. So let's start with Renari, Merchant of Marvels and Dragon Cultist. Renari is a obvious dragon commander because it gives all of our dragon spells flash. We also get flash with artifacts too, which is I think a neat part of the design in case you didn't want to go dragons. But we are. And I think the partner for this one, the background, should be Dragon Cultist. I'm not planning on putting a bunch of ways to do 5 damage with instants and sorceries. I'm just planning on hitting people with a bunch of dragons and then making more dragons. So I think the key with this setup is that having our commander out means that our dragons effectively have haste. It's not technically haste, but if we can cast them on our opponent's end step, then we get to attack with them right away before our opponents knew what was on the battlefield. And since we're going to be holding up a lot of mana, we probably want to put in some more instant speed things like instant speed spells, instants. And if we do want to go that way, there's a bunch of dragons that kind of work well with that plan. Mirrorwing Dragon's a cool one. I mean, if this is our plan, we probably want to put a couple of nice little things that pump up one creature, and Mirrorwing will have it pump up our whole team. The other cool part about this card is if your opponents target it with like a single target removal spell, they have to copy it on all of their own creatures. A little bit harder to remove. Depending on the makeup of those instants and sorceries, Manaform Hellkite can really make a lot of extra token dragons with haste. And then Smoldering Egg becomes a dragon. It counts towards our dragon count if Dragon Tempest is out. And also we can eventually flip it into the Ashmouth Dragon and just start flinging damage everywhere. And just a little sprite dragon, a simple 1/1 with flying and haste, but it's going to keep growing as we cast more instants and sorceries. Non-creature spells technically, so it also works if we want to go heavy artifacts and flash those in. Now if we're imagining the world where we're kind of doing things at instant speed and our dragons have pseudo haste, then let's look at some dragons that attack really well. Ones that benefit from dropping into play before your opponents know what's about to hit them. Udvara Hellkite, one of the MVPs of all dragons. It's a hefty 8 mana, but if we can drop this on our opponent's end step and then attack with the team, we're going to make a ton of huge dragon tokens. It's a $20 card. Hellkite Charger is extra cool. I mean, I know it says haste on the card, but if we can cast this on our opponent's end step with flash and then attack with it with all of our mana open, we will certainly be able to pay the 7 mana to get an extra combat step. Probably don't need too many combat steps with a ton of dragons.
Okay, just gonna jump in real quick here and let you know that we've got a couple of messages from our sponsors. In the meantime, please like and subscribe. One of these ads is real, one of these ads is fake. Here we go.
Are you tired of your gates being the wrong gates? Well, sign up for Darksteel VGN, Virtual Gate Network, so you can privately have your gates be any other gates you want. Do you live near Cliffgate? Now you can say you live near Azorius Guildgate. Do you live near Baldur's Gate? Well, now you can say that your address is Heapgate. And you can also watch Professor Whom in South Amonkhet, even if you don't live anywhere near there. Darksteel VGN, your privacy is important. And now the real ad. For the Wizards Tower, wizardtower.com. Our Canadian viewers get a special deal with coupon code BREWBALDERS. That's 5% off singles when you spend $20 or more at the Wizard Tower, wizardtower.com. Also go to wizardtower.com for magic content, deck lists, articles, that sort of thing. This was the real ad. Now back to the show.
Okay, so let's put that brew on the back burner for a second and look at the other pair of partners and backgrounds. Ganax, Astral Hunter, is a dragon, and every time another dragon comes in, we get a treasure token. This is going to ramp us a lot, and it doesn't restrict us to 1 per turn. It doesn't have to be non-token. It just every time we get a dragon, we get a treasure token. It's a little bit like a discount of 1 if you want to think of it that way. And then for the blue background, I think I'm going with Feywild Visitor. It's a natural combo because every time we connect, we make a blue fairy dragon creature token, and it will trigger the other one to give us a treasure token. And I just love treasures anyway, because dragons love treasures. It's kind of a sub-theme of the deck anyway. If we're leaning on treasures, I definitely love Trove of Temptation. There's not a lot of ways that just automatically give you a treasure every turn. That is a drawback to make people attack you. I've been in situations where people are just like, well, I have to attack you, so I guess I'll attack you with everybody. I have no choice. That's what the card's telling me to do. But that's not so bad if you have a Slumbering Dragon. Your opponents now will have to consider whether they will want to attack you with the whole team or just the minimum 1 required. This thing gets big quick, and if we are doing a treasure theme, we gotta have Zorn in the deck. Instead of making 1 treasure, we make 2. If you got another $25 in your pocket, Goldspan Dragon is one of the better dragons, obviously. I think the fact that it makes a treasure token upon attacking isn't the cool part. The cool part is that our treasures count for 2 mana when we crack them. And Professional Facebreaker is a new addition into the attack to get treasures kind of family, but it doesn't have to be the Facebreaker that connects. As long as they're on the battlefield, any one of our dragons connects and we get a treasure. And I think that added bonus is important. We can actually dig for stuff if we need to by sacrificing a bunch of treasures as well. And of course, this is a dragon deck, and we want to do a ton of treasures. There's no better deck for Magda, Brazen Outlaw. I mean, if you've already got the 5 treasures on the battlefield, your opponents have to counter the spell. Because as soon as she lands on the battlefield, I'm cracking those 5 treasures and I'm getting my best dragon onto the battlefield. It's a fantastic card. So powerful in this deck. And it's probably only second to this next card, which I think is super fun. Reign of Riches. I haven't had a chance to play with this yet, but I can't wait. We're playing a lot of big dragon creatures, so they cascade very nicely into other big things. And it is worth noting that it does the first spell you cast each turn. So this kind of points us towards the instant and sorcery build. If we kind of want to lean that way, we will be able to activate this on everybody's turn, probably. But I think I know which pair I'm going with. It's the treasure one. And the reason I want the treasures on the battlefield is because there's a secret sub-theme of this deck, and that's Brudiclad. We're no strangers to secret Brudiclad decks around here, but just being able to turn all your treasures into a big honking token creature is amazing. Even if we have to do the default 2/1 blue mirrors, that's still a powerful effect. I can expect we'll have a bunch of treasures on the battlefield. But let me go back to Magnet for 2 seconds. Magnet can also search up an artifact. Brudiclad isn't a dragon, but he's an artifact, so that works. And I think thematically, it's kind of perfect. Don't think I haven't noticed all these Phyrexians showing up in other sets. AFR, Neo, New Capenna. I see you, Praetors. And this is another reason why I think I'd rather lean on the treasure pair in the command zone as opposed to kind of the flash instant sorcery one. Because once we're going instant and sorceries, especially if we know we're a secret Brudiclad deck, we're going to want those things like Talrend that make token creatures every time we cast spells. And then once you add that, you want to add even more cantrips, and then before you know it, we're not a Dragons deck anymore. I want this to be a Dragons deck. Now, it has been a little while since we did a sort of secret Brudiclad thing around here, so let's talk about some newer cards that really fit in for the theme. Artificer class just came out, and it's perfect. If we want to build our deck so Brudiclad is the only artifact, we can get to level 2 by paying 4 mana and tutor him up right away. We can't get anything for the first ability because we're not putting any other artifacts in the deck because of it, but it seems fair to do to me. Elminster's Simulacrum is another cool way to get extra tokens of things that aren't little mirrors or goblins or things. We get to make one legit token copy of a creature for each opponent. And these are all things that Brudiclad can make all those treasures turn into. Jaxus the Troublemaker is another way to make another copy of a creature we have, which is then eligible to be multiplied by Brudiclad. But I think Jaxus might have room in the deck anyway. There's a lot of these dragons that have attack triggers that I wouldn't mind making blitzy copies of. Irenicus's Vile Duplication. Real simple. It's like a clone, but it's not a creature. It actually makes a token copy. And it's not legendary, which is kind of key. That means Brudiclad can make multiple copies of non-legendary versions where he wouldn't have been able to otherwise. I wouldn't mind a ton of non-legendary Niv-Mizzet Perunes on the battlefield. Cast 1 instant, do a boatload of damage. Fable of the Mirror Breaker, that's another way we can get extra treasure when we attack, and when we flip it, we can make token copies of things. Mirage Phalanx, it's got to be a Soulbond thing, but then we can also make another token copy of it. An Access Denied, although not making a token copy of a creature, is a 5-mana counterspell that makes a ton of little tokens that are good in the air. I'm happy to attack with them, but they also work to make copies of. Now here's the point where you have to decide, would you rather have Access Denied or a Spell Swindle? They're both pretty good and they both fit the theme of the deck. So I guess both of them. And I want to highlight one more dragon that I think is really fun to copy if you have Brudiclad going. Nesting Dragon. I want to make a token copy of it somehow, and then Brudiclad's going to make all of my treasures turn into nesting dragons. I'll drop 1 land and get 2 dozen eggs. 2 dozen eggs. It was like a regular grocery order. 2 dozen eggs, please. Some milk. That Gaston guy keeps eating all of them. And then the beauty is if I get to make it to my next turn and I still have Brudiclad going on, now I can make all those eggs into more nesting dragons. And finally, perhaps the most copyable dragon is Terror of the Peaks. Here's another $25 dragon, but I'm sure you can imagine why. If we have 10 or more copies of this, all we got to do is drop 1 creature and we'll probably finish the game. That's a lot of damage to fling around. So there you have it. I think this is a fun deck. I know I always say that, but I do mean it. I love a secret Brudiclad deck. I think dragons love treasure, and I love the fact that thematically he's that one Phyrexian. It's just too perfect. But let me know in the comments if you've got a different Izzet commander that you'd like to run with this kind of deck. And in the meantime, keep being you. The world's a better place for it. I'll see you next time.